Hello, welcome to Development Economics. This is lecture 21 and we're going to talk about institutions and development. Institutions is pretty much the foundation of development of any country. So we were talking a lot about how we try to develop a country, how we try to jump from a developing level to a high level to reach development level of developed countries. But before FDI, before trade, before economic policies, before financial system, before all of that, the foundation of any country, in fact, and the success of a country is determined by this foundation, and this foundation is our institutions. So I'm going to read from Wikipedia. Institutions are stable, valued, recurring patterns of behavior. Its structures or mechanism of social order. So yeah, that's a definition. So basically, in practical terms, everything, these are the bricks our country is built from. The government is one institution. And when we usually, again, when people talk about institution, that's first what comes in mind. That's the most typical example of an institution. It's a government. However, markets are also institutions, and for our goal of understanding the development, that's as important as the government. So we have a government as an institution, but we also have markets, different markets. We have markets for consumer goods and services, so general goods and services market. We have a financial market where we have financial assets, we have loans, we trade different types of money in time, or money, quality of money. We have loans, deposits, stocks, bonds, all that stuff. We have some kind of other institutions that, again, environment protection mechanism might be an institution if you have something like EPA that we try to destroy now, but that's an institution, a part of the government. But in a more general terms, it's a way the country try to protect environment. So it might be NGO, it might be some kind of political organization, it might be some kind of cultural, even, or community-based institution. So it's hard to define institution without using word institution. So again, it's the very foundation how we do things in each country. And number of research show that despite all all other differences, so institutions are actually the most important thing that determines development. A huge role in this is played by South Korea. So I think I mentioned that in some of the earlier lectures, that for a long time it was considered that the success of a country is kind of predetermined. So it depends on your historical background, even sometimes of your ethnicity, or whatever the climate range you are, like the European and the North America, so then Japan, they kind of all align with some climate range. So there is a theory that that's where you develop because of the 4 seasons. So that's true, but for very early periods of development. So the places with 4 seasons, they motivate kind of humans to develop, because when you have season change, you can do something in summer to protect you in winter, rather than Africa, where you have all the time summer, or if you are all close to north and you have only winter, that is not very supportive and motivating to some kind of development. But that's true, but that's for the 1,000 years ago, 5,000 years ago, for that period of time. But recently in modern history, the case of South and North Korea showed that one nation split it by, it's like we discussed that methods of impact evaluation. That's like your natural kind of randomization, RCT. You split a country into two halves and you establish one institution that are not effective, and in the other country you establish an effective institutions with a more or less market-based economy with some investments, open markets, and so on. And in North Korea you establish a communist dictatorship, and then you compare. So this case, again, luckily we studied the impact evaluation, so that's your RCT. You kind of randomly select two groups. Yes, maybe there were some difference between North and South before the separation, but in a global content in terms of ethnicity, language, location, it's the same country. So now after this case and a lot of other evidence as well, Singapore, Malaysia, many other evidence appeared after that. Same Eastern Europe, we have similar countries but different path of development. That all says that institutions play the major part. The way your government works, the way your market system works, or if you don't have markets, whatever you use instead of them, the planning economy, the exchange of trades, exchange of goods and services. The way your country operates with other countries, so how open your country is, the juridical system, the system of laws, what kind of laws the country use, everything plays. Those bricks are your institutions that together is, again, we don't know what 100% can ensure your development, but institution is that we are mostly sure about. You need certain effective institution. When we say effective, this means even though quite trivial definition of effectiveness. If you put $1 to the government creates some kind of service or product for the society that cost around $1, more or less, maybe more. That would be extremely effective. Maybe less, that's also okay. And actually some research said that developed countries at their best can do only 50 cents. $1 of our taxes goes to the government. In a good case scenario, the government will redistribute 50 cents to, let's say, student government scholarship or some other program. So other 50 cents go for the government itself to function, but still it's good. If you put $1 and you get 1 cent, which is quite realistically in many countries, that is not effective government. We don't actually need that government as it is. It's not effective. So when we say effective, it's not some philosophical efficiency. No, it's purely financially effective. And it's easy to calculate. If we talk about the markets, there is, again, coming from financial markets, what we say bid-ask spread. So it's a price difference. It's a measure of efficiency. Price difference of a price that a seller is ready to accept and a buyer is ready to pay. So of course seller wants as much, but there is some certain minimum he will accept, and the buyer wants to pay as little as possible, but there is certain high level he can pay. So the efficiency of market will determine how close the prices where the seller determines the price and where the buyer determines the price. So in case of auction, we have a bid and ask spread. So, and it's very easy to track from financial markets. So bid ask spread. So basically it's like an auction. And if I want to buy, I offer my price. And if I want to sell, I offer my price, and we see how those prices close or not. So in not effective economies, you have a huge misbalances, and that's quite real. And what happens, for example, if you buy an asset for, if you buy a car for $20,000 without effective market, again, living in US, it's hard to get, but that's a reality. If you buy a car for 20,000 in many developing countries, it's very hard to resell it for 20,000. Sometimes you can find actually better way, you kind of profit from that, but this again means not effective. This means another person is not able to buy a car for this amount of money for some reason. Taxation, different regions, different rules for different people, discrimination. That's everything. Number of ways that institution is ineffective. Thousands, really, it's very hard to name all of them, but the fact is there, and we can measure it again very clearly by how effective the market. Again, if the market is competitive, you can check the price. If the prices, you have different companies offering the same relatively price, and those companies are not extremely profitable, then that's a competitive price. So you get a lower price as consumer, you have a competitive market. And that's actually some institutions can be tested in the United States as well. And here education and healthcare are really behind other developed countries. Not because of the quality is quite good, because of the price. And the price is formed by monopoly. You have certain way the institution of healthcare in the United States and the institution of education is structured, that the result, for us it's hard to understand why it's like it is, because like as I said, there are thousands of complex reasons, but it's very easy to test whether it's effective or efficient or not. You just collect, say, you collect the prices and you compare. If I can, if this medication costs $100 in the United States and $10 in Canada and $5 in Germany, that is definitely something wrong with this market in the United States. This means the market is not efficient. Why? Hard to say. You need to investigate, find the reason, maybe address it. But to test it, very easy. So in developing countries, again, lots of things. You have trade borders, you have a lot of protectionist industry, you have cooperation of government and business that prevent other business from being competitive, and all other stuff. So those institutions are not effective. And to picture an effective government, so we can say the government is effective when it is not related to business. If the business comes to government, then the government starts being favorable to that business. That's pure logic. If no matter what people say, again, politicians say here in US, today I'm a businessman and tomorrow I'm going to be some politician and I forget that I have a business. That is weird, and that is not true anywhere in the world. If a businessman sees the power, they will be favorable to their own business. That's very common in Ukraine and unfortunately common in other countries as well, as I guess you may guess. So that's not efficient, not effective. So historically we kind of combine all the situation, different countries, we come up with this democratic idea. So when the government is separate from business, it can be more effective. It can provide services kind of more fairly to everyone. Even though there should be some feedback from business, because government wants business to grow, but it wants the best kind of the business to grow on a fair conditions. That's where efficiency comes from. If you create a fair conditions, then the most effective company will dominate the market and will be a winner. So we get the effective market. That's how the government kind of enforce a market efficiency. And another thing which is very important is what's called market failure. So that's a situation. So the logic, so again, we come to economic theories. We have neoclassic theory, that is our mainstream theory, and it says that the market is the best way, is the best institution to deal with any problem, kind of period. So whatever you want to do, whether it's education or healthcare, the market is the best solution. That's a belief of neoclassical economics. That's a dominant belief in specifically United States, and in most of developed countries it's a little bit modified so the modification takes place when in situation that is called market failure. So there are situations where markets are not effective. That is called market failure, and then the government needs to do something. Now the difference is in recognizing those market failures. So Europe, as you say, as you already hopefully know, that has higher role of the government in providing safety net, education, different types of support for the society, because they recognize some things as a market failure. So, a simple example, a homeless person in developed country, we can say that you can see this as economist, you can see that's a market result of a market competition. That's true. That person is not, it has nothing to offer to the market, and for some reason, we don't know the reason, we don't even kind of discuss it. So we just say, imagine, so that person has nothing to offer to the market. So in pure market competition, he has to be homeless. There is no other way. That's, again, you can recognize that's the ideology of kind of actually dominant view in the United States. Now in Europe, the situation is different. That they say there should not be homeless people in developed country. If you're homeless in developed country, then your country is not really developed. So they consider it's a market failure. They don't put it on a people. They don't. So again, one point of view, you say that's people's fault. Those people are homeless because they have nothing to offer to the market. That's their fault, period. That's true. So the thing is, both views are true. It's just a position. It's just how you feel about it. It's not something that, one is a mistake. No, it's not a mistake. That's true. Those people have nothing to offer to the market. That's true. But it's your attitude, as particular as a government, what you do with this. You can do nothing. Say, we believe in markets. If you have nothing to offer, nothing to offer to the government, that's your problem. You can see Europe, they think, no, that's a market failure. We should interfere that because we believe that there should not be any homeless in our country. So then the government interfere in a different way. They can provide some housing, they can provide social support, maybe some job. There are different ways to do that, but what we need to understand is this importance of the concept of market failure, that it's not so easy to decide, especially with, we work with humans. If we say, you want to buy a laptop, you go to Best Buy, Walmart, and you compare prices, you pick up the cheapest, the quality you want, and the cheapest price. That's easier market example. But if we talk about homeless people with no skills, what to do with them? That's should we apply market rules? Should we consider it market failure? That's a subjective decision, and it's up to the basically government and the people who democratically elect their government. And more clearly, market failure related to business when you can calculate it. So market failures means that markets are not effective. That is a case of natural monopolies. That's the easiest example you can find pretty much in any textbook. So if you have natural resources, natural monopoly is a type of business where there cannot be competition. A good example, natural resources. You have one place where natural resources are concentrated. You cannot allow a few companies to develop it. How are they going to do that? No, there should be just one company, work with that. But then the government should interfere because it's not fair for the company to have all the resources. So usually there are taxes that the company is heavily taxed. Like in case of oil, usually, so they have a huge tax. The tax goes to the government, and governments use those taxes to fund different programs. That's one case of natural monopoly. Another case of market failures related to environment. So we discussed just in previous lecture the environment. That's a market failure. The market forces, because they're focused on mostly profits, they don't care about environment. So if you let the market rule, the market will destroy the environment. I feel like people in Hawaii realize that even without economic theory. Now, here's a case of market failure. The government should step in and change the market in a way that will provide results that are satisfactory for the people, and the majority as democratically elected government should provide benefits for majority of people without hurting minority people. That's kind of the idea behind democracy. So different other market failures as well. So usually, and to summarize, you have a quantifiable cases where usually it's a type of business where a company can become a monopolist, and then you can quantify that the company makes tons of profit for themselves and no one else benefit from this activity. That's a case where you can tax it and redistribute those profits. There are cases that are not that clear in terms of financial estimations, and that's where the government should, again, depending on the position of the people who elect the government and the position of the government, different countries consider different types of market failures. So going back, so again, we have the institutions are very important in terms of their efficiency. Unfortunately, how to evaluate that, it's very, very hard. And a lot of developing countries are a bit mixed because they have some very good institutions and some are not developed. Let's say Cuba has a very good healthcare. It's quite famous for that. But it's not developed in terms of other things. It has the market for goods and services is not very effective, and a lot of problems again with trade and so on. But healthcare is developed. So in some other countries, in Ukraine, we have quite good education system, but problems with the corruption. So mixed. and many other countries have this kind of mix of institutions. Some are more effective than another, and for investor point of view and for economic policy point of view, we need to understand what institutions need to be fixed. And that's why, if you recall, a couple lectures ago, we were discussing that IMF provides loans to the government, and I was saying they're not effective. Unfortunately, that's how it is. But at least their goal is actually to modify institutions. What they don't maybe that they realize, but they don't know how to deal with that, is that the government that is ineffective will not become effective if you give it money. And I think, again, living in US, you still can relate to that. If you give money to a government that you consider is not effective, I don't think you can build in any kind of logical relationship how that government become effective. But that's what in mind of IMF policy. That's a bit kind of unfortunate, but it's a hard problem. It's not that, it's not working, but there is an easy and clear alternative. No, it's very hard to force this institutional change, because old government doesn't want to become more effective, and the new government, usually there is no new government, there is no political opposition, usually is as ineffective as the company that the party that rules in, again, many developing countries. So it's very hard to facilitate those changes. They try to do that, again, using the doing business ranking. So there are a lot of recommendations how to improve the ranking, but really old habits die hard. So for developing countries, even they know that they need to focus on institutions. They know institution is something that you can copy from other countries. So you can select a country you like. Of course, culture matters a lot, of size, neighbors, everything matters, but more or less you can copy the institution, if the regulation, the laws, but it's a complicated process, and I would say much harder than to deal with things we discussed before, to deal with FDI, to deal with the trade. That to deal with institution, it's way harder, but that's the only way. That's the foundation of everything. So you need those changes. Thank you.